What happens when the man hiring you is secretly the one who owns the whole company? Elias Harlow stood in the back of the quiet elevator, tugging at the cheap windbreaker zipped up to his chin. His usually clean-shaven face now had a trim beard, his dark hair dyed a dull brown. A pair of thick glasses sat low on his nose. The ID clipped to his lanyard read Eli Hart Recruiting Intern. No one at this downtown recruiting office had ever met him. It was one of 7 branches he'd acquired 5 years ago when he bought the entire company from a retiring founder. Since then, Elias had focused on scaling operations, turning the 7 branches into a streamlined hiring machine for entry-level roles across retail, warehousing, and food service. But lately, something felt off. He'd noticed a pattern in the hiring reports. A strange drop in accepted applicants from certain neighborhoods. Too many candidates marked unfit, without clear notes. And worse, an uptick in turnover within the first month of hiring. His district manager, Dana, brushed it off. Probably just candidates not cut out for the job, she'd said. But Elias trusted numbers more than excuses. So here he was. He stepped out of the elevator and into the office. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The space was clean but cold. Cubicles lined both sides, each one with a recruiter seated behind a monitor headset over one ear. The front desk was empty aside from a half-full coffee mug and a stack of intake forms. A woman in her 40s with a tight ponytail and a clipboard approached. "You the new intern?" Elias nodded. "Yeah. Eli. Emily Dorsey, recruiting manager," she said quickly, not offering a handshake. "You shadow me and Owen today. Don't talk too much, just observe." "Got it." She turned and walked off. Elias followed. Emily barely introduced him as she moved from cubicle to cubicle. The recruiters didn't pay him much attention. He was just another intern. They had no idea he was the one who signed their paychecks. 2 hours in, Elias had scribbled 4 pages of notes. He watched as recruiters flew through interviews, barely listening to candidates. Some didn't even look up from their screens. At one point, a young man in a hoodie walked out of an interview room looking defeated. As soon as the door shut, Owen, one of the recruiters, leaned back in his chair and muttered, "Another fast food dropout who thinks he's CEO material." The recruiter next to him chuckled. Might as well put future no-show on his resume. Elias froze behind the cubicle wall. "I mean, did you hear him?" Owen continued. "Could barely make eye contact. I just want to work hard, yeah, sure, until he's late 3 shifts in a row." Emily leaned in, laughing under her breath. "We should just start filtering them by voice. If they sound too soft, toss them." Elias blinked. His heart pounded in his chest. He stepped back slowly, his hands tight at his sides. They were mocking the people who came here hoping for a chance. Candidates who may have had no one else rooting for them. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay in character. Not yet. He spent the rest of the day quietly shadowing. He saw a few recruiters who seemed decent, like Naomi, a woman in her 20s who took extra time with each candidate. But the culture around her felt poisonous. Loud, dismissive. That night, Elias sat in his car, staring at the dashboard. He'd always believed in second chances. That was the point of this company, to help people get on their feet. He took a breath and picked up his phone. "Hey," he said. "I want interviews with every recruiter tomorrow. One-on-one. Make it happen." The next morning, he walked in early, unnoticed again. He watched as Owen turned away a young black woman after glancing at her resume for 5 seconds. "She's not gonna fit her vibe," Owen said to Emily. Elias's jaw tightened. He followed them into the break room later, waiting by the vending machine. Owen sipped his coffee and said, "Half these kids are just trying to get out of their mom's basement. If I hear one more sob story, I swear you done." Elias said calmly. Owen turned. "Who are?" Elias pulled the lanyard from his neck and dropped it on the table. "My name's Elias Harlow," he said. "I own this company." Emily's mouth opened, but no words came. Owen looked like he'd seen a ghost. "I've been watching," Elias continued. "And everything I've seen so far? I'm disgusted." He looked at the both of them. "You don't get to decide who deserves a job based on how they look. Or how they talk. Or whether they fit your vibe." Emily straightened her back. "We were just venting." "It's a tough job." "No," Elias cut in. "You were mocking people who came here for help. They stood in stunned silence. He looked at them both. You'll have a meeting with HR today. And depending on what else I find, I'm not sure either of you are staying. He turned and walked out of the break room. The office was silent. No one laughed that day. By the time the HR rep from corporate arrived that afternoon, 2 offices had already been reserved. Elias didn't say a word as the staff trickled in, each of them aware now, if not in full detail, then certainly from whispers, that the quiet intern was actually the man running the company. Elias sat in the smaller conference room reviewing Naomi's employee file. He'd asked for every performance review, call log, and candidate feedback entry she'd submitted in the last 6 months. Her numbers weren't the highest in volume, but her candidate retention rates were near the top. That said more to him than any spreadsheet of call counts. When Naomi stepped in, she looked hesitant but composed. "You can sit," Elias said, keeping his tone even. "Close the door." She obeyed, folding her hands in her lap. "I'm not here to interrogate you," he said. "You're not in trouble." She nodded once, guarded. "I saw how you handled interviews yesterday," Elias continued. "You listened. You asked follow-ups. You gave people a shot." "I just try to treat people how I'd want to be treated," she said quietly. "Do you feel like that's the norm in this office?" Naomi hesitated. "Not really. Be honest." She took a breath. "It's not. Most of them go through the motions. They're more focused on fast placements than the right ones. If someone doesn't sound confident or looks unsure, they're written off." "Do you bring it up?" "I did," she said. "Once. A few months ago. I told Emily I thought we were losing good candidates because we weren't giving them a fair shot." "What did she say?" "She said I was wasting time on a charity cases. Said if I wanted to run a mentorship program, I should go work at a high school." Elias leaned back slightly. "You document any of that?" "I saved an email. Not the meeting." "Send me what you saved." She nodded. "Do you feel unsafe here?" Naomi's eyes flicked to the door. "Not unsafe. Just dismissed. Like I don't count." Elias paused. "That ends today." He didn't ask anything else. She stood, thanked him, and left. Over the next 2 hours, Elias met with every recruiter. Some were stiff and defensive. Others tried to shift blame on the system, on their workload, even on bad candidates. A few were simply indifferent. They leaned back, arms crossed, like they were enduring a lecture they didn't agree with. But one conversation stuck out. A man named Paul, who'd been there for just over a year, sat down with a notebook clutched to his chest. His eyes darted from Elias to the table. "You've seen what's happening here," Elias said. "Talk to me." Paul looked down. "You're not going to like it. Try me." "There's a short list," Paul said. "Owen keeps it. Names of neighborhoods, zip codes, even schools. If someone lists any of them, he flags their application as high risk." Elias's jaw tightened. "Emily knows," Paul added. "She doesn't use it directly, but she doesn't stop it either." "You ever report it?" Paul's knuckles whitened around his notebook. "I wanted to, but I've got a daughter. I couldn't afford to lose the job." Elias nodded once. "You still have your job, and you'll never have to cover for anyone here again." Paul's shoulders dropped like he'd been holding his breath for a year. By the time Elias finished the last conversation, it was getting dark outside. Dana, the district manager, had driven in from the regional office. She was waiting in the large conference room, arms folded, expression unreadable. Elias walked in and shut the door. "I assume you've heard by now," he said. "You're here to make a point. I'm here because the branch you oversee is a disaster. I've hit every hiring goal you gave me." "At what cost?" Elias stepped closer. "You think metrics excuse what's happening in that office?" Dana didn't flinch. "I told you months ago we were dealing with low-quality applicants. You didn't want to hear it." "No. What I didn't want was veiled excuses for bias." She raised an eyebrow. "You think it's bias to say most of the people coming in aren't ready for the jobs they want?" "I think it's bias to filter candidates by zip code and ignore their actual qualifications." Dana blinked. "Don't bother denying it. I've seen the list." She sat back in her chair. "So what happens now? You fire everyone?" "No," Elias said. "Just the ones who made this place toxic." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. By the end of the day, Emily and Owen were escorted out by HR. Their desks were cleared by assistants, and corporate took over all content on their devices. Elias gave no speech, no dramatic confrontation. Just a quiet, firm removal. Recruiters watched from their cubicles, hushed. No one laughed, joked, or pretended not to care. Later that evening, Elias walked through the now silent office. Naomi was still there, her screen glowing with a resume open. She looked up as he passed. "You should go home," he said. "I will. Just finishing this last one." He paused. "We'll talk tomorrow. About what leadership here is going to look like moving forward." She nodded. "Okay." Elias left the office and stepped into the cool evening air. He didn't feel relieved. Not yet. But he felt clear. He'd built this company to give people a chance. Somewhere along the way, that mission had been twisted into quotas and gatekeeping. But now the rot was exposed. Tomorrow they'd start rebuilding. Not from scratch, but from truth. The next morning, Elias arrived just before opening. The office was quiet, blinds still drawn, overhead lights off. He entered using his own keycard, the one none of the staff had ever seen. He didn't sit in the corner like an intern this time, he took the manager's office. Emily's old desk had already been cleared, drawers still halfway open, a faint smell of stale perfume lingering in the air. He didn't bother closing the door. At 8 sharp, Naomi walked in holding a notebook and a small thermos. She paused in the hallway when she saw him behind the desk, then stepped in. "Morning," she said, voice steady. He motioned to the chair across from him. "I want you to take interim lead over this branch," Elias said. "Starting now." Naomi blinked. "I've only been here just over a year." "You've earned it. You've got the only candidate feedback logs that show real follow-up. Clients have flagged your hires as the most consistent. And not one person in this office has ever filed a complaint or concern about your conduct. That's not luck." She hesitated. "What about Paul? He stays focused on candidates. I need someone who can anchor the team." Naomi sat down slowly. "If I do this, I want to change how we screen. The resume filters? They're cutting people out before we even speak to them." "Then change them," Elias said. "You'll have access to the back end this afternoon." "I've already flagged the IT team." She looked at him for a long moment. "What's the end goal here? Just clean house and hope it fixes itself?" "No," he said. "We rebuild with people who actually want to help others get hired. That starts with how we treat them the second they walk through the door." She gave a short nod, stood, and left without saying anything else. By 9, most of the team had arrived. The usual morning chatter was gone. No one hovered around the coffee maker. No one laughed from their cubicles. The air felt tense, like the building itself was waiting to see what came next. Elias stepped out of the office and walked into the main room. "Everyone," he said, raising his voice just enough to carry. "Conference room. 10 minutes." No one moved at first. Then chairs scraped back, heads down, eyes averted. They filed in one by one, the silence thick. Naomi stood near the door, her notebook closed and held tightly in front of her. Paul took a seat at the back, arms resting on the table, jaw tight. Elias waited until they settled. "Things are going to change," he said. "Not because of metrics. Not because of pressure from upstairs. But because what's been happening here is wrong." He let that sit for a beat. "If your instinct is to protect yourself right now, I understand. But if your instinct is to protect the people walking in here every day looking for a job, then you'll be part of the solution." A recruiter near the front shifted in her chair. Her name was Marcy. She'd said nothing the day before, not rude, but not supportive either. "What about the quotas?" she asked. "We get pushed to hit daily numbers." "That pressure didn't start here." Elias nodded. "You're right. The system rewarded speed. That ends today. From now on, placement without retention is meaningless. If a hire walks out in under 2 weeks, it reflects on us. If they stay, we did our job." Another recruiter, Jonah, spoke up. "Are we allowed to take more time with interviews?" "You're expected to. If we're rushing people through just to check boxes, we're wasting everyone's time." A few heads nodded. Elias looked around the table. "Naomi's stepping in as interim lead. Any concerns about that?" No one spoke. "I'll be on site for the next several days. Not as a watchdog. As your partner. We fix this together. Or we don't fix it at all." He stepped back, letting the weight of the room settle. Meeting over, the team scattered. Some returned to their desks immediately. Others lingered by the windows, whispering. Elias didn't interfere. He went straight to a workstation and pulled up the interview queue. He selected 3 candidate files marked low priority from the previous week. All had been passed over without interviews. He read through them carefully. One had a GED and 3 years of warehouse experience. Another had a recommendation letter from a community job center. He flagged them for callbacks and sent the list to Naomi. Within the hour, she was on the phone scheduling them herself. As the day went on, Elias walked the floor. He didn't hover or correct. He listened. At Jonah's desk, he overheard a call with a candidate who'd just moved into the area. Jonah asked for details about their living situation, then paused. Wait, you said you're staying with your cousin. Is the address temporary? There was a long silence. Okay, thanks. I'll flag it and get back to you. He hung up and pushed his headset off. Elias stepped in. Why'd you flag it? Jonah looked up. Temporary housing gets auto-marked for follow-up. It's policy. Whose policy? Jonah hesitated. Emily's. Delete it. Use your judgment. Not a rule that targets someone's living situation. Jonah nodded slowly, then cleared the flag. By early afternoon, Paul tapped on Elias's door. He held 2 printed emails. I found something, he said. Owen forwarded a shortlist to another recruiter last month. The subject line said filter pool. Elias scanned it quickly. Did the recruiter use it? I don't know, but I cross-referenced the flagged names with rejected candidates. Over 80% were never interviewed. Send this to corporate compliance, Elias said. I want this documented. Paul nodded and left. At 4:30, the front desk buzzed. A woman stepped in, early 20s, wearing a pressed button down and slacks a size too big. She clutched a worn-out folder of resumes. Elias watched from the hallway as she approached the reception desk. No one was there. He stepped forward. Hey, he said gently. You here for an interview? She nodded quickly. Walk in. I saw the sign outside. Come with me. He led her to an open room and handed her a water bottle. Someone will be with you shortly. He stepped into Naomi's office. You available? She looked up from her screen. For what? There's a walk-in. She looks nervous. Naomi stood immediately. I've got it. Elias didn't follow. He stood by the glass divider and watched as Naomi greeted the woman. No script, no clipboard, just a handshake and a seat. He turned back to the floor. Recruiters were still at their desks. Some with headsets on, others typing notes. The office wasn't perfect. Not yet, but it was breathing again. At 5, Elias gathered his things. As he was leaving, Marcy stepped out of her cubicle. Sir? He turned. I was one of the people who stayed quiet, she said. When things were bad. He waited. I want to be better. I just didn't know how to speak up before. Elias nodded once. Now you do. She didn't say anything else. Just returned to her desk and shut her monitor down. Outside, the sun had dipped behind the skyline. The city buzzed with traffic and movement. Elias walked alone toward his car, the street alive with people heading home or heading to work, some likely hoping to land a job soon. And when they did, someone would be there to meet them. With respect. 2 weeks later, the downtown branch looked different, not in its layout or decor, but in the way it moved. The buzz of headsets hadn't disappeared, but it no longer masked the tension that used to cling to every cubicle. People spoke with purpose now, not out of obligation. Conversations were quieter, more focused. The front desk was no longer abandoned. Candidates were greeted within moments of arrival. Elias didn't show up every day anymore. He came unannounced, at varied hours, always entering through the same side door. Sometimes he stayed an hour, sometimes the whole day. He didn't make speeches. He asked questions about process, about support, about where things still felt broken. The day after payroll closed, he arrived just after lunch and found Naomi in the back office, sleeves rolled up, running a side-by-side call review with Jonah. Any red flags? Elias asked, stepping inside. Jonah removed his headset and turned. Not this time. Just some gaps in follow-ups. Naomi stood. We're building a tracker for callbacks. Not just to monitor quantity, more to make sure we're not ghosting candidates after interviews. That's good, Elias said. I came to talk about something else. He motioned toward the hallway. Naomi followed. They walked past the break room, past the conference room still being used by HR for exit interviews with recruiters from other branches. Elias stopped near the window that overlooked the street, where a narrow alley separated the office from a nearby laundromat. We're bringing in a regional compliance officer next week, he said. Full audit of filtering practices. Not just here, all 7 branches. Naomi's brow furrowed. You think the list was wider than we thought? I don't think. I know. Paul forwarded another email chain from 3 months ago. It was shared with at least 2 other offices. If it happened there, it probably happened elsewhere. Naomi folded her arms, eyes sharp. You said we'd rebuild. You really meant across the board. Every desk. Every policy. We either get it right or we lose the right to do this kind of work. She nodded slowly, then glanced out the window. There's something else, she said. I've been hearing from a few candidates we placed last month. Some say they're doing well. Others say the jobs were different than advertised. Elias's jaw tightened. Different how? One said they were promised full-time hours but got scheduled for 15 a week. Another said their supervisor told them your recruiter oversold you. He exhaled. We'll recheck every job listing we've published. Compare them to actual placement feedback. If clients are misrepresenting roles, we pull their access. Naomi raised an eyebrow. That'll cost us. Not as much as keeping our name attached to false promises. She nodded again, then turned back toward the office. I'll start with last month's batch. Elias stepped into the hallway as she left. He made his way to the front desk where a young man was filling out a digital form on a tablet. The receptionist, a temp named Andre, looked up and gave a quick nod. Walk-in? Elias asked. Yeah. Name's Marcus. No scheduled interview, but he brought his resume. Elias approached the young man. Mind if I take a look? He asked. Marcus handed him the paper. It was creased but clean, the text well formatted. Experience listed in reverse chronological order. 2 years in grocery stocking. 1 year assisting with home renovations. You looking for warehouse or retail? Elias asked. Either, Marcus said. Just something steady. Something where I'm not starting over every month. I'll see if someone's free. Elias returned the resume and walked straight to Paul's desk. You backed up? He asked. Paul shook his head. Just finished a call. There's a candidate at the front. Marcus. Good background. Give him more than 5 minutes. Paul was already grabbing a notepad. 10 minutes later, Elias passed by the interview room and saw Marcus sitting comfortably, speaking freely while Paul listened, pen tapping occasionally but never interrupting. Elias didn't linger. He headed back into the operations room where 2 recruiters were reviewing a call log dispute. Marcy looked up from the screen. We've got a candidate saying she was told she'd get an interview but never heard back. The log says otherwise. Elias looked at the screen. Play it. The audio clicked on. A voice said, thanks for your time. I'll follow up if anything changes. Elias frowned. That's the recruiter ending the call. Not the candidate. Marcy nodded. Exactly. She never got a clear answer. Reach out to her. Apologize. Schedule something if she's still available. Marcy didn't hesitate. Got it. Elias turned to the second recruiter, a newer hire named Dev. How's the workload? Manageable, Dev said. But I've been trying to figure out how to track which candidate sources are actually working best. Talk to Naomi. She's rebuilding the metrics dashboard. Dev nodded. I will. The door to Elias's office opened shortly after 4. Naomi stepped inside, holding a single sheet of paper. I finished the placement review, she said. Out of 36 jobs filled last month, 9 had discrepancies between what we promised and what the client delivered. Elias looked up. Names? She handed him the list. 3 were big box retailers. 2 were warehouses. The rest were smaller firms. Send formal notices, Elias said. Remind them of the terms they signed. If they don't correct it, we pull placement services. Naomi hesitated. You think they'll push back? Probably. But if they don't take our candidates seriously, they don't get access to our pipeline. Naomi leaned against the desk. Feels like we're finally turning this place into what it should have been. We're not done yet, Elias said. But we're close. The next morning, Paul entered early and placed a folder on Elias's desk. What's this? Elias asked. It's from Marcus, the guy I interviewed yesterday. He emailed this last night. Elias opened the folder. Inside was a handwritten letter. It read, I've been to 5 staffing offices in the last 3 months. This was the first where someone actually listened. I don't know if I'll get the job, but I left feeling like I had a shot. That matters more than you think. Elias read it twice, then folded it carefully and set it aside. He walked into the main office where Naomi was already coordinating with HR to onboard a second receptionist. Paul was walking a candidate through orientation paperwork. Jonah was on a call, nodding as he took notes. Marcy was reviewing job descriptions, flagging inconsistencies. Elias didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He stepped out into the hallway, the morning sun slanting through the windows, and pulled out his phone. Yeah, he said when the call connected. It's Elias. I want a meeting with all branch leads next week. We're resetting the standards, top to bottom. And this time, we're leading with people, not numbers. He ended the call and put the phone away. No slogans. No PR campaigns. Just one office, one reform at a time. And it started with listening.